I know. I'm starting you off right in the middle of the story here. I got it in my head a couple of years ago that I wanted to build a rock bouncer from scratch. I'm not a professional fabricator, and I don't even play one on TV. I'm about halfway through this build when I decided to start filming it. I only have lots of photos of the first part of the build, including work on a bunch of the fabricated parts, and maybe at some point I'll show that, but right now we're picking up at the point where the chassis, body panels, and floor pans are off to powder coat. In the meantime, I'm going to be working on prepping and painting the axles. So this is what we're starting with. Pretty standard fair 14 bolt rust. I'm going to try and get as much of the surface rust off the center section as I can just to give the paint and primer the best chance of sticking. And obviously to protect the metal. Everything else, the fabricated parts, are pretty clean, other than some mill scale. Later in an upcoming video, I'll do a little bit of prep, final welding on the trailing arms here, and then those are going to be painted black as well. The aluminum links are going to remain unfinished. Continuing to prep, got a lot of the rust off, but you can see there's going to be areas underneath the support plate that I'm just not going to be able to get to. So I'll show you what we got for that. But it's looking pretty good. Probably decent enough to prime with some of the primer that we got. Trying out some of this clean metal primer. It says use on bare, painted, or lightly rusted metal. So we also have this to try out. This is rusty metal primer, which might be a better fit for some of those areas underneath that I just can't get to. For color, just going with a black. Also got some orange to touch up the knuckles. And I'll probably paint the high steer arms just the same color because I don't feel like taking them off. So according to the cap, it looks like a pretty close match. We'll see. And for the trailing arms, probably just go with that gloss black. Front axle now is primered, so we'll see how good that sticks. The axle is going to get colored black. And I'm going to do the steer arms here are going to get this orange color just similar to the knuckle, so that'll be fun to try and mask off. I think I'll do the orange first and then come in with the black on the axle after. We'll see. But first axle's got primer. So yesterday we got the first axle primered. But I gotta wait 48 hours before we can put the top coat on this. So while we're waiting on that, I'm gonna start on prepping back axle. You see I gotta get all the steering linkage off. This is for the rear steer. So that's what we're starting with. We'll see where we end up. It's amazing how much you can underestimate how much time this stuff is going to take. I figured, yeah, I'll grind on this axle for an hour or two, clean up a few spots here and there, and it'll be ready to go, ready for prep. Wishful thinking, man. I ended up grinding on this thing all day to get it ready. There's so much surface area on the center section of grinding that rust out of there, and you try to get it as clean as you can for primer and paint, and it just takes so much time. After all day of grinding, this is where we ended up. It's not perfect, but the center section has way less rust on it than it did. It should be clean enough for, it might even be clean enough for the clean metal primer that we have. It's looking pretty good, I think. I sprayed it down with WD for the night, and then tomorrow take that off with acetone and start masking and getting ready for primer. All right, it's the next day. It's been 48 hours, so the plan today is to start spraying paint on axle 1. So all the high steer arm and this caliper bracket, and you can see all the white overspray on the knuckle. I'm going to spray all that orange to kind of match the knuckle powder coat. Now obviously that's going to overspray. I'm not going to worry about masking the overspray because everything that's white is going to be, on the axle anyway, is going to ultimately be black. So I think it'll be easier to do the orange first and then mask the orange off to spray the black parts black. I think it'll just be, less to mask off to do it that way. So that's axle 1. And here's the result of spraying the knuckles. Obviously the right way to have done this would have been to take the knuckle off and spray it, so you don't have to mask everything off, but I really didn't feel like taking these knuckles off. Came out pretty good considering. There's a couple other assorted parts that needed to get primered and paint. And then all of a sudden, we're getting the chassis back. Time flies when you're having fun, right? I ended up spraying the first axle, and then later the second axle after work one evening in haste, trying to hurry up and get the axles done because we don't have the room. We don't really have room in the shop for that and also the chassis because I knew we were getting the chassis back from powder coat pretty soon. So I didn't get any footage of the day after, but as you'll see here in a minute, got some sneak peeks of what the finished axles look like. I think that's where we'll cut it for this video. That was kind of the story for the first part of this, was just getting some of that axle work done and getting ready for the chassis back from powder coat. I mean, look at this thing. It looks sweet. I love this color. This is Illusion Cherry is the name of the powder coat. It's kind of a grungy day today, so you couldn't really, wasn't really popping in the sun, but later got to see it in the sun, and man, this thing really looks good. So follow along now. I'll just be releasing videos here and there as I progress on this thing. I do this on the weekends. I'm not full-time. Like I said, probably throughout the way I might insert some photos and stuff of the actual build, but I didn't get a whole lot of video before I started filming. So here we have the finished axles. This is skipping ahead a little bit. As you can see, I already got it put in the chassis, but that'll be in the upcoming video.